Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for attending the 2012 PPPC National Convention, and welcome to the first session of the afternoon entitled The Image Awards, Why Haven't You Won Yet? So we've got a pretty good number of people, so that must mean that there's some people here planning on dethroning some of the perennial champions, which would be great to see. Nothing against the perennial champions, of course. Just a quick reminder, this session is being recorded, and it will appear in the PPPC Live Learning Center. The purpose of the Live Learning Center is to make it so that if you want to review the presentation later on at your own time, or on your own time and at your own speed, that is available to you. There is more information on that at the booth that will be on the show floor. And at the end of the session, with about 5 minutes to go or so, I'll be handing out some evaluation forms. If you could fill those forms out, they help you with your obtaining credits towards your either CAS or MAS. Appreciate if you hand those in, and that helps both the speakers and the association to get the sessions going in the direction that you'd like to have them go, and it helps the speakers as well. And now about our speaker, Professor Robert Soroka. Professor Soroka is a business professor, and he's an accomplished speaker with significant industry and academic experience. Born in Montreal, Professor Soroka earned his first 2 degrees in Canada, a Bachelor of Commerce from McGill University, and that was followed by an MBA from Concordia University. Following that, he obtained a doctorate of jurisprudence at the State University of New York. He has a passion for teaching, and that can be evidenced in some of the awards that he's won over the years. In 1997, he received the Concordia University's Distinguished Teaching Award, and in 2009, the McGill University Management Undergraduate Students Teaching Award. Also, Professor Soroka has been heavily involved with the PPPC in the Image Awards. He has been a judge for over 10 years, and some of the judging criteria that was created a number of years ago is still being used today. Please join me in welcoming Professor Soroka.
Thank you very much. And as you can see, I mean, apparently this was supposed to be a full session, but it is just after lunchtime, so we're a little more intimate crowd this afternoon, which is good, which will give us an opportunity to explore some things in a little more detail. And for those people that are watching this on video, I hope it gives a little bit of additional insight as to how to maybe increase your chances or improve your chances of coming away with an Image Award. And our agenda is I think, a pretty direct agenda. Why do I want to win? What judges seek? What judges qualify and dismiss? Submission problems and solutions. How to create a winning submission, and of course, I'm going to leave some time toward the end to answer all of your questions. So, without further ado, let's proceed. Why do I want to win? And it's not a self-evident question, because it does require a significant amount of effort to win. So why would I be inclined to put that effort in? Well, for one thing, independent judges will validate superior performance. Is one thing to say we do well. It's another for an independent, objective party to say so. It's a great marketing tool. I mean, I would want to do business with organizations that have been deemed to be superior by independent judges, peer-reviewed, if you will. It is a distinguishing characteristic. It is a characteristic that will put you apart from your competition. And it does raise the industry bar. One of the things that I have found since my association with the Promotional Products Professionals of Canada is that this is an organization with a strong degree of integrity and always a very definitive focus on maintaining the standards of this industry. And yourselves as participants in this industry and members of the PPPC are undoubtedly the beneficiaries of that type of commitment. So the first question that I think merits, first issue that merits some deeper exploration is what judges seek. You know, before we even get into that, maybe it would be good to perhaps recognize why we're even having a session like this. The questions come back to PPPC immediately after the Image Awards. I'm not sure why my submission didn't win. What was my submission lacking? I thought we did very well. My goodness, the client was extremely happy. Why aren't we up on the podium getting our pictures taken? Well, for one thing, judges will seek clearly stated objectives, and by the way, I am going to elaborate on every point that I'm putting up right now. So we're seeking clearly stated objectives. Qualification of originality. It's always great to say we're original, but what's the qualification? What do you mean by being original? A well-defined target audience, a tie-in between the promotional product chosen and the promotional message that the product supported, and specific distribution strategy, which would mean the methodology and certainly the rationale behind the methodology if it's not self-evident, and clear results. And again, sitting here right now, I'm not insensitive to the fact that probably some of you are saying, "Oh, gee, my submissions up till now have had all that, and I haven't won yet. So what's the deal, Soroka?" Well, we'll explore that. We'll explore that momentarily. By the way, I should qualify that I am no longer a judge at the PPPC. I stopped a couple of years ago. For a variety of reasons, nothing to do with PPPC. I stopped due to professional conflict, but I could tell you that the rules and qualifications that we instilled and that I contribute to in terms of writing are still in place, and I'll be happy to discuss with you anything that is not clear after this presentation. So now, the question, a common question is what judges qualify and dismiss, and let's talk about the objectives. Let's go into the objectives in more detail. So what do we mean by clearly stated objectives? Well, what should your client's investment buy? What is your client getting with their investment by investment in the promotional product in question? What metric will determine whether or not the promotion was successful? Objectives. By extension, are suggestions as to what we would interpret, how we would interpret whether or not the promotion was successful. So let's see, did we achieve our objectives? What metrics are you using to verify whether those objectives were satisfied? And the objective must be in context to the client's campaign. If a client is looking to stimulate awareness, for example, that's different than a call to action objective. So it has to be evaluated. We will evaluate it in that context. And I assure you that the judges do look at the context, provided the context is provided. But if the context is not provided, well, then you're leaving it to the judge's own devices, which is probably not the best thing, because we're reluctant to interpret. Does the stated objective reconcile with the expressed results? We'll talk about the expressed results later, but one of the things that I could tell you as a judge for over 10 years, one of the things that I could tell you that was perhaps a little pet peeve of mine, was that when we saw the results, we observed the results being expressed, we found that there was in some cases, there was little association with the objectives that were stated at the beginning of the application. So if my goal is to lose 20 pounds in the next 3 months, and my results is that I'm a better public speaker, well, there's no takeaway. If my objective is to go to the emergency room to get my broken arm mended, and I walk out with my appendix removed, that wouldn't, that might be good, but it's not what I came in for. Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, I'll cue the audience. Now, the objective, some of the categories it's my delivery, by the way. It's not that the lines are good, it's just the delivery. The objectives, the objective categories, there are many. I mean, this is just a simple list, and you could add to this list, but you know, the standard: awareness, interest, desire, action, new customers, increased traffic. Certainly the objectives are going to differ if we're branding a new product versus trying to generate traffic at our trade show booth. You know, the objectives are going to be dependent on the particular situation. So this is, but again, they have to be stated in a way that where we could qualify whether or not the promotion was successful. Now, what in terms of dismissing objectives that are contrived, do not reconcile with the campaign or the stated outcome, sort of my broken leg appendix example, are impossible to evaluate or defy any type of evaluation, or are strictly subjective in nature, where our objective was that everybody had a good time at the promotion, and they did. Well, these objectives will either be dismissed or they will be poorly evaluated by the judges. So, you know, your best bet is to try to keep the objectives limited to traditional marketing objectives. And, you know, this is something that you undoubtedly have already worked with your clients. I mean, your clients have objectives, and you know that in order to maintain that business, you have to achieve those objectives. So that would be the type of thing that we're looking for in terms of a complete application. Originality is one category in the application process. And how do we qualify originality? Well, you know, this is one where often, rather than getting the description or the explanation as to how this particular promotion is original, what we tend to get is, well, our client constrained us in a particular way, so there's not much room to be original. Or we may get feedback later on when we say, well, you know, you wanted originality, you scored me low on originality, and in the meantime I had no room for originality. Well, that's not really true. What we recognize as judges is that you are going to be constrained to some degree by your clients. Your clients may say, look, this is our limitation, be it a budget limitation, be it a limitation in the context of the promotional campaign, you know, sure. So we recognize that your client may be creating a little box for you. But the originality that you contribute to the campaign will take place within the box. So given the constraints that have been laid on you, you still have that. You could still convey the originality that you introduced. For example, I think judges would hold very high a narrative that would suggest that, well, we were limited by the budget, we're limited by our role in this promotional campaign, but given these constraints, this is the way we were able to be original. And I can tell you from my own personal experience that there were some entries that I scored very high that were based exactly on that. Wow, you know, with the limited budget that they had, look what they came up with. And it might not have been as grandiose and it might not have been as eye-catching, but it did what it purported to do. It satisfied the objective and it was original within the constraints that were allowed by the client. In terms of originality definition, well, theme, slogans, logo, copy. You know, a lot of what we do, what you do, might not even find its way into the application. We saw some. I've seen personally some great ideas, but there was no elaboration. I saw a nice slogan on a promotional product, but it wasn't discussed in the application. So, you know, again, that's leaving me to make my own interpretation. Within the constraints, within our box, what original efforts were introduced? And, you know, maybe to make my point, the question is, can a pen ever be qualified as original? Just a pen. And my answer to that is yes, and I think after our discussion today, your answer to that will be yes as well. The fact is the originality has less to do with any product, but more to do with the way the product is integrated in the campaign. And again, if I suggest to you that a pen is as commodity a product as you're going to get in this particular industry, but if you have created a particularly original approach and you express it and you may put it in the constraints of the budget or what have you, that will work. I'll give you a good example. There was a client that one of the members had who had a production, theatrical production. And what this person and this theatrical production was part of a festival. Now, there was going to be a public relations evening where all of the participants in this festival, about 60 participants, were going to have a minute or two skit to promote their particular production. Now, the client in this particular case was the producer of one of the performances, and he knew that the media is going to cover this event, and the media is not going to comment on all 60 performances. There's just not enough room. So this client wanted that at least to get some kind of mention in the media. So how was he going to do that? Well, he figured his performance was good. The product always has to be good if the promotion is going to work, but he needed something a little bit more. So what he decided, so his production, without getting into the whole details, there was a food component to it, and his little skit, the minute skit, had a food element to it. So what he did was he spoke with a distributor who suggested that they distribute chocolate bars to all of the people in that were entering, all the media people. But not just any chocolate bar. It was a chocolate bar where the sleeve was removed, the original sleeve was removed, and instead there was all of the promotional material on the new sleeve. Well, I'm not going to say that it was the best production. I'm not going to say it was the best theatrical contribution to this festival, but he was one of the 5 that was mentioned, and in the newspaper it specifically mentioned the distribution of the chocolate bar as something very innovative to get everybody's attention. So to that end, if you're going to submit that chocolate bar, well, somebody at first blush might say, gee, it's just a chocolate bar. But within the constraints of the campaign, the fact that a client said, look, I only have $2 for each promotional product, and I can only afford 200 of them, well, from within the box that was set for the distributor, that was pretty original, and it satisfied the objectives. Contrived originality, which unfortunately happens in some of the applications. I got to get this application out. What am I going to do? It's better. It's not. You're not fooling the judges at that point. If it's contrived originality, if you say, well, I could sell anything as original, well, we sort of see right through that, and you have to figure for every 5 contrived original narratives, there's 1 or 2 where people work very hard at putting them together, and those will stand out. The target audience is probably the biggest indicator as to whether or not the entry was well thought through. For the people who are offering an entry, they're really going to work hard to define the target market, and what we found is that for some that are just thrown together, target market is not really very clear to the judges. It's one of the easiest categories to lose points, and it's probably one of the easiest categories to earn points. There are all kinds of ways of defining a target audience. If you're a distributor and your client is pursuing consumer markets, well, the target audience could be defined in terms of demographics and psychographics and geographics, and behavioral breaks down into a few others. Any introductory marketing textbook would have this. If your client is institutional or industrial, business to business, industry type, product type, size of customers, a variety of different ways of defining a target market. You don't have to use all of them. You shouldn't use all of them. And the fact is, you're not, the beauty of this is that you're not doing anything new, because presumably if you are working with your client to develop a promotional product, you've already done this work. To make a promotional product work, as you know better than me, you need to know the target audience, who is going to be receiving this promotional product, what is the, and you're going to tailor a product to reach that particular market. So that work was already done. It's just a question of expressing it in the entry. We get entries where, well, the target market, everybody who attended a trade show, well, everybody who came to our client's store. Well, that's a little vague, and again, it's hard for us to evaluate the promotional product against the target market that was supposed to be stimulated by it. So it doesn't take much, a little bit of work, and I assure you that it will pay off. And again, it's really just recreating what you've already done for the client. Now, if this wasn't done for the client, well, this as an aside, this could make you a more effective marketer too, by forcing the definition of the target audience. Now, I know your client's sometimes a little vague on this as well, as to who the target market is. But, as a matter of policy, you might want to explore that more deeply. Well, you said your clients are all of your customers, but in terms of the demographics, age, income, occupation, level of education, social class, the psychographics, activities, interests, opinions, values, beliefs, norms, lifestyles, attitudes, whatever. I could go on and on. But if you get a couple of these from each category, not only are you getting a better image award, but you're probably going to be a more effective partner to your client as well. So there's a variety of different ways that this could be done in an upgraded fashion. Is size of market important? There's one question on the entry: what is the size of the market? And the answer is, of course, it's important. And a lot of times we don't get the size of the market. We have to know. I mean, clearly, if your size of the market is 10,000, that will lead us to evaluate the promotional product one way. Where if the size of the market is 10, that's another. The fact is that if your client, for example, is a radio station and they want, come Christmas time, they want to be giving a very special reward, a very special promotional product to the 10 highest paying or highest paying clients in terms of advertising dollars in the course of a year, well, that's certainly, it's a small market, but it certainly will put context into the type of promotional product that is being entered for consideration. In terms of the promotional product, and this is another element of the campaign, of the entry that you're asked to explore. Clearly, everybody discusses what were the promotional products, but a lot of times, believe it or not, it stops right there. We get a description of the product, a very deliberate description of the product, whether it's a distributor entry or whether it's a supplier entry. And really, there's a lot more that could be said for that promotional product. Why was that promotional product chosen? What was the rationale? Why that one over the others? Particularly for a distributor, the distributor would be, has all kinds of opportunity to elaborate as to what the creative thought was. The judges, we're evaluating hundreds of these, so we're likely not going to be able to look much beyond the entry. So it's your opportunity to make us recognize, hey, before you dismiss this product, if you're considering dismissing products, keep in mind this is why we chose it. This is why it's effective. And, it may catch the judges that, well, I didn't think of it quite that way. Again, I always want to qualify that none of this should be contrived, because if it is contrived, again, it becomes fairly apparent. How does the product relate to the essence of the campaign? Sometimes a promotional product is introduced and on its face, it's not clear why there's even an entry. But then if you evaluate it in the context of the overall campaign, often a promotional product is a supporting element to an overall campaign. Well, how did this product fit into the overall campaign? You know, and that would give us a significant insight and allow us to evaluate the marketing acumen that went into the decision. And I guess the takeaway point from here is that you cannot be too specific. And any application that expects the judges to connect the dots is likely not going to win. And I have to tell you that the feedback often from the people who do not win is, why didn't the judges see it? Why couldn't the judges see that obviously this is a winning product? You know, and that's not going to happen. Not when you have hundreds of promotional products to go through, and particularly when there are other entries where they've taken the time to connect the dots for the judges. In terms of distribution, now this is the very murky waters that that we find a lot of entrants are troubled by. What exactly is distribution strategy? Well, the product had to be distributed in some way. Now, it's a bit of a challenge, certainly, when you have no control over distribution. Sometimes you do have control, sometimes you don't have control. From a distributor perspective, when you're just providing the product and you don't have control over the distribution, I would say that. I would make it very clear. This is the way the product was distributed. This was the client's decision. The reason why the logic behind the client's decision was this: we support it because, and so on. If you are involved in the distribution decision, well, all the better. You could indicate why you chose the distribution the way you did. Again, always thinking back to the objectives of the campaign, always thinking back to the rationale behind the choice of product and the objectives of the product, what it's supposed to generate, and that will help you immensely in terms of the distribution strategy. It's unfortunately a lot of people choose to either put very little effort into the distribution strategy or not discuss it at all. And or because according to the candidate, it's self-evident, there's no need to elaborate. That will of course impact negatively on an entry. The results, well, 20% of your score is based on the results the results of the campaign, and this was, if I had to choose one category where years and years ago, this is where there was the most deliberation, it had to do with results, because the fact is, if you were entering, say, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago when I first started, I started with PPPC about 14 years ago, when we first started evaluating these, the results were all over the map. Some people were giving us very detailed results. Some people were saying, "Well, gee, we don't know what the results are." Some entrants were saying, "Well, the results that everybody had a good time." Really, seriously, we had that many times. We had a trade show. We had people come around. Everybody had a good, and that's. For 20% of your score, that's not saying a whole lot. So we need to have it a little bit more deliberate. And again, how hard could it be? Because your client is evaluating the results of the campaign. Your client has to justify the money spent on your promotional product. So so the results have to be a little bit more deliberate. The results, unfortunately, are often exaggerated. A good case in point is that if the promotional product is indeed a support or supplemental product to the promotional campaign, and then the results suggest something like, well, because of this, the company turned itself around. It was on the brink of bankruptcy, and then we provided an embroidered handkerchief to all the people that visited its trade show, and now all of a sudden, the world is great again. We'll be able to afford Christmas presents. Yeah, it's a little tough to accept that. So, we want to have something that really makes sense, that really is in the context. And again, don't worry if it is only part of a promotional campaign. Well, indicate the results based on your contribution, and that will hold a lot more water. It is difficult. It's difficult for entrants to express, but it's not impossible. The client often doesn't provide data. I'll discuss with you before the end of this presentation how to overcome this particular issue. If the objective was qualitative, well, we could overcome that as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And where there's no meaningful feedback, again, we'll talk about that a bit later as to how to overcome that. Now, we've addressed a lot of different problem areas. Now let's talk about what we're going to do to fix those problem areas. The objectives, we said the problems with the objectives, they're poorly expressed, they're expressed without metrics, there's no reconciliation with results. That was what that's our summary of what we discussed a few minutes ago. How do we overcome this? Well, the first thing I would suggest, and not just for Image Awards, but in general, start thinking about every client project as a potential Image Award entry. That's going to help a lot, not only for your candidacy for an Image Award, but also in terms of your general way of doing business. You're going to be forced to work with your client. Okay, well, you've given me this objective. This objective is not really clear. The fact is, if you don't have a clear enough objective for an Image Award, you probably don't have a clear enough objective for your own work with the client. You want to work with the client if you cannot have a quantitative objective, at least narrow down that qualitative element that's going to be used to evaluate your performance as a business partner. Tie the results to the objective. You're ultimately going to have to express results in your entry. Well, at the get-go, for the Image Award, for the Image Awards, you might want to start contemplating how that objective is going to be expressed in the results area. Now, you could really get started with. You should get started with, as we said at the onset. If you have a client for whom you might have a great campaign, that's exactly 11 and a half months from the Image Awards. Well, we want to start thinking about that now, not maybe in 10 months from now or 9 months from now, and going back to the client to try to recreate the steps that to this campaign. We find that when the objectives are written with a strong sensitivity to the client, that they are embraced. They're embraced better. They're more explicit. They're better expressed. And from the client perspective, writing from the client perspective, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the client's results and the client's objectives that have to be satisfied. Now, with respect to strategy and execution, and this is another one, big points for the strategy and execution. So some of the problems, just to recapitulate what we addressed as problems. Well, the target audience was poorly defined. There was a loose correlation between the chosen promotional product and the campaign theme. And the motivation driving distribution strategy was lacking in clarity or lacking in a marketing rationale. So let's focus in on these particular problems, and let's see how we can enhance the strategy and execution component. One solution would be to take the time to develop a narrowly defined target audience with your client. And again, as we said earlier with the objectives, this should be done outside the context of the Image Awards anyway. This is going to enhance your marketing with your client, and it will also allow you to create a more meaningful relationship as opposed to simply one that is premised exclusively on a transaction where your relationship is limited to the purchase order and the invoice, and that's it, that's all. So this will certainly assist in that end. The promotional product has to be correlated to the company theme, the slogan, the promotional message that is indeed the focal point of the campaign. And again, this is one of those things where, again, the judges are often left to connect the dots. Can't you see that this product works so well with the campaign? You know, often it's not easy to see, but it could be easily expressed and it could become more evident. The fact is that, you know, a lot of the products may have some merit in the context of the promotional campaign, but it has to be clearly stated. At the same time, it might be very evident, but the judges don't want to be the ones to make that conclusion. We want the entrants to draw that conclusion. So the connecting the dots little catchphrase, I think that's if there's any takeaway from the discussion we're having, that's the one. I've used the term a couple of times, and I think it works very well. Connect the dots for the judges. The marketing rationale, there is a reason why you're doing it, and there is a marketing reason why you're doing what you're doing, why you chose the product, why you chose the distribution strategy that you did, why you position the product in a particular way, how this integrates well with the promotional campaign your client has initiated. You know, and again, this is a good opportunity to express the constraints that you had. We're a part of a major campaign. We're the primary focus of the campaign. Make it clear. You know, two promotional products companies can be working with the same campaign. Say a golf tournament for a key account. One of the promotional product companies is doing the bulk of the promotional materials. One is doing only a limited product contribution. Well, you know, we should be able to see that from the application. The results, we identified several problems. Let's just rehash what those problems were. We said that the results don't reconcile with the objectives. We said the results are sometimes poorly expressed. They're difficult to authenticate. Client is sometimes not forthcoming, and the promotional product is only a small part of an integrated campaign. These are some of the issues that have been that we find and that our entrants have expressed. So let's try to overcome these problems. One solution. Absolutely, when you're doing the results section, make sure it reconciles with the objectives. So go back to the objectives section. Are the results in line with the objectives? And again, it might seem like a simple thing, but at the end of the day, many of our entrants don't have the results reconciling with the objectives. You know, so we might have the objectives of awareness, and then we get the results, well, sales increased by a certain amount. Well, that may all very well be true, but there's no reconciliation. If sales wasn't the objective, then the results aren't very good at that. You could have made millions upon millions of dollars for your client, but the objective was awareness. So somewhere in the results section should be a discussion on awareness. Establish the metrics with the client in the early stages. Again, you know, something that is just good business. And wherever possible, express in quantifiable and measurable terms. You know, as a business professional, I would love to go back to my client and say, well, look, this is what you asked for, and this is what we delivered. And that, of course, is not only good for the Image Awards, it's just good business. And once again, don't contrive results or substitute accolades or congratulatory messages. We get letters of attestation from clients who don't really add a whole lot to the entry. Dear Image Awards people, we have to say we're really happy to work with Company X. Company X did a phenomenal job, and they're just so nice to work with. And thank you very much, and we hope they win. we have gotten, as a judge for as many years as I was a judge, I can't tell you how many times received letters like that, where all it would take were a couple of sentences to indicate, okay, these were the results we expected, these are the results that were achieved, this is why the product achieved them. And that's it, that's all. And you'll find that it's going to make for a stronger statement. It doesn't have to be a big write-up, but it has to be a definitive and directed write-up. No matter how small a role, assess the import of your product in the overall campaign and its contributions. You know, we have a lot of entrants who have pretty innovative products, but because they're only a small part of the overall campaign, there's a little reluctance in terms of the write-up. You don't want to, some entrants will, on the other side, downplay the product. It has a role, whatever role it was. Let's discuss that role and see how well it contributed. You know, if I could use again, I'll use another theatrical example. I might have, 19 lines in a play, but I want to make sure those 19 lines are delivered perfectly. We just had the Golden Globes at the time of this recording. We had the Golden Globes last night, and some winners had a very small role, but what they did very well, and for that they won an award. The same thing could be said for even a small component of a promotional campaign. It could still be a winner of an Image Award. Now, let's review some of the common myths about Image Awards. And one is that the identical product can earn very different scores for two separate companies within the same category, therefore the process is unfair. And that's not really accurate. The fact is, you could have two products that are very identical, if not exactly identical, but they may have different scores for many of the reasons we discussed today. The fact is that the products might have different roles. The product might have different roles in two different campaigns. The target audience will differ. The purpose of the product will differ. The results will differ. So the fact is that the product is only one element, maybe the core element, but certainly one element of the overall entry. Another myth, this is the big one. An excellent product with obvious results does not need a complete write-up. Well, yeah, it does. It does. Again, going back to our connect the dots element. First of all, there's nothing that's obvious. See, a lot of great products, there's nothing that's obvious. If all it would take would be a great eye-catching product, well, then I could bring my 7-year-old to the judging room. He'll tell me what sticks out, what works, and he'll pick it out. But of course, that wouldn't be any marketing basis. That's why he doesn't do it, and we have marketing experts doing it, doing the judging. So you people, being the experts in your field, being the knowledgeable people that you are, and the effective people in your industry, what you want to do is clearly do the complete write-up, even if it might be believed that it's self-evident that the product should win. The fact is that it does need that supporting documentation. Judges will not choose a simple pen over mine. Now you can insert technologically advanced product here. I could tell you, and I use pen a lot, and I'll tell you why. I'm sort of biased, because I could remember one year in particular, there were some really keen, innovative products that were sent in for judging. And in one particular category, I personally put a quote-unquote simple pen ahead of the really cool gadgetry that we were evaluating. And the reason why is, again, evaluated everything in the context of the campaign. The client for whom the distributor was working had very limited funds. The message, the slogan, was very innovative. It was explained very well. The product itself, although perhaps the most commodity of promotional products, still fit nicely into the overall promotional campaign. And and at the end of the day, it worked. Again, it's the tortoise and hare example. Just because I seem to be quickest doesn't necessarily mean I will win the race. Now, I must caution you, though, that in that example I just gave you, you might be thinking, well, gee, the person that the entry, I can't divulge too much because it's confidentiality. But the fact is, the entrant, in particular, did not contrive the results either. It wasn't contrived. I mean, we'll see right through that. So that it's just a lesson in that, if the product fits in the way it's supposed to fit and it satisfies marketing objectives and it's done within the confines or constraints of the client's requirements, well, it most certainly has a chance if it is given the right support. I don't know how to write, and I left my theory in college, so I'll never be able to write up a winning application. Nobody's looking, that's again a myth, nobody's looking for John Grisham-like prose. We're not looking for that at all. We're looking for more directed commentary that basically expresses in a concise way. It doesn't have to be a long draft, but in a concise way, exactly why the product is what it is and the marketing objectives that they are. The more elaboration, the better. It doesn't have, again, concise is good. It doesn't have to be concise, but it has to be clear. It has to be readable. I think that we received a variety. We receive a variety of different applications or entrants that are certainly diverse in terms of the writing ability. But at the end of the day, it's the content. And you could have the best writer writing for you, but if they don't have the marketing expertise that you have, it's not going to do anything. And at the same time, with your marketing expertise, even if you're not the best writer, I assure you, with your marketing expertise, you'll use the terminology we recognize, you'll use the metrics that we could appreciate, and we'll be able to evaluate your candidacy favorably. My clients are the problem. I've asked my clients and then you could insert the issues here, but they never come through. Well, the reason why that happens is largely, when we hear these comments, it's usually because you or your fellow industry members are going to your clients late in the process. The promotion has ended a long time ago, clients onto new things, and now you're going back and asking for a recreation of the campaign, so you could submit your entry, or you're trying to fill in what you can't remember. That's why we advocate contemplating this right from the get-go. Again, reiterating what I had said earlier, every product should be considered as a potential image award entry, and this way you go through the process. So this is one way to overcome this. And when you do it that way, you overcome the need to go back to the client for that supplemental information because the information is already there. And to summarize how to create a winning submission, start the process while you're active in the campaign. Invest the time. See, I could have spoken clearly into the microphone, but it doesn't go any higher, and I would have pulled a disc in my neck, so that's why it was like that. Details. Connect the dots. Integrate the objectives, the strategy, and execution results. And what do I mean by integrate? The objectives, the strategy, execution results must reconcile. So the objectives if I look at the strategy, I will naturally be able to see that that's what I would do, or what you would do to achieve the objectives. The execution would be the logical, tactical approach to moving the strategy along, and the results should reconcile all the way back to the objectives. Provide objective testimony that speaks to the claimed results. So be accountable. You said it was successful. Why was it successful? How can I validate that? Just keep in mind that example I gave earlier. A good time was had by all. My client was extremely happy. Tiny Tim could get his operation. So you want to avoid those type of testimonials. Professionalism throughout. The fact is, there is a big difference between the entries that are thrown together last minute and the ones where significant time has been taken to think this thing through. It has to be readable. And again, we said we're not looking for Shakespeare, but it has to be readable. The grammar has to be correct in French or English. We have bilingual judges. Don't contrive the results or roll within the client's campaign. as we said. And basically, that would lead to a complete application. And before I close, I just want to maybe emphasize one last thing, and it's something that we talked about at the get-go. The Image Award should be looked upon as a promotional opportunity for your organization. Winning an Image Award is a great thing for your organization. At the same time, doing the things you need to do to win an Image Award will only make your organization that much more professional. And I can't think of a better way to maintain your due diligence, or to infuse a notion of professionalism, but by considering every product a consideration for Image Award. I want to thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to taking any of your questions. Thank you. Can I take any questions? Please.
Well, it's not really a question, just like something I wanted to take note. It's important that all the people that do participate into Image Awards, that they know that it's not based on a comparison process. And that's why sometimes the pen is reselected over like glass technology.
Exactly.
And also it's all about the concept of the program. And this leads us into connecting the dots, like you say. Because a lot of entries, the information is not connected easily, and there's a lot of place for assumption. And you know what, sometimes this is not voluntary on the part of the participants. So maybe, like as a suggestion, what they could do is that have their entry read, but by somebody that's not into the entry. Because when you're into the entry, you know all about it. So you skip some information because it's just automatic in your mind. So if you have it read by someone from the outside, you know, maybe then if the person doesn't understand, well, there's a good chance that the judge is going to lack something too.
That's an excellent suggestion. And sorry, I think I cut you off. That's an excellent suggestion. The fact is, anybody who is reading this, you could start off with a lay person who has no knowledge of your business, and then move on to somebody within your business, and that type of review will certainly enhance the application. Absolutely, you tie up any loose end. I would wholly concur. Any other questions or comments? What? Sure.
Let's say, I'm not sure if I'm thinking loud enough now, but curious about if you put an entry in 1 year and it doesn't go anywhere, but yet the client does a similar type of a program the following year, is there some kind of a check that you don't do the same, people aren't doing the same thing over and over again?
Okay, so the question, just for the video, so the question was if if an entrant doesn't win 1 year and then does something similar the next year, will that you're asking, is there such check to eliminate that?
Let's say you wrote it really poorly, and you think, well, it's a really good project, I just did a terrible job of writing it.
I'm out of it, for a while, so I'm hesitant to tell you, just in case there were other rules that were instituted. I'm not quite sure I could, so that I would direct you to perhaps Gladys, I guess, Gladys Casp, who might be able to answer that more clearly in terms of previous entry to a new entry. I never saw the same entry 2 consecutive years, but that, even if there would be, that probably would have been, if there were an issue, it would probably, once it's in the qualification stage at the PPPC offices, that might there might be something there. But I think it's a good question. It should be addressed with maybe Gladys. Yeah.
Well, I can answer that.
Okay.
An entry has to be like within the year. Okay, it cannot be older than a year. So even if it's the same product, but it's represented, I mean, it's a new sale, and of course you can present it again. Of course you can.
Now, you get some, we had one a few years ago, and it actually went almost from like August to December, the whole project. And of course, I think your cutoff is October sometime.
Yes, but it's not like, it doesn't have to be done before October. It's in a 12-month span. It could be something that you did in September, and the cutoff is October, but you could still present it the year afterward.
Any other questions or comments? No? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
The product, you have to submit a product to show what it was.
Yeah.
So you always have to be thinking that I have to make an extra one to send it to the board.
Well, to my recollection, I don't think if you see, whenever I get a question like that, I'm thinking of all the exceptions to the rule, right? If there was only one product in the campaign type of thing, I imagine there would be, there's some accommodation for that in terms of maybe pictures or whatnot. Are you thinking of something in particular? Because I'm thinking of the exceptions. Are you?
I was thinking of, I just did a T-shirt, and it was really quite different,
Yeah.
but I didn't keep one of them.
Yeah, I think I think that goes back to what we were saying with respect to every product that you're doing. Think of it at the onset as maybe being a potential promotional product entry or an image award entry, and I certainly would make an extra one if I thought, gee, it's really great. In terms of, especially if it's a T-shirt, I'd absolutely make an extra one. Sure. Yeah. You probably generally distributors will make a few extra just in case. So just put one to the side. Any other questions? Yes.
So I noticed last year when I was at the Image Awards that there's a gold, a silver, and a bronze as such.
Yeah.
But in a lot of the categories there wasn't.
Right.
Anything other than say the gold.
Yeah, because there's a specific, because apart from all the considerations I brought out to you, you have to achieve a certain number of points. And if you don't achieve a certain number of points, then you won't be eligible for an award. So, for example, just coming first, second, or third is not sufficient, because what if second and third do not achieve the minimum acceptable cutoff? So then you won't win an award. That's to eliminate categories where there might be only 3 entries. And let's say of the 3 entries, let's say, hypothetically 2 are very poor. Well, we wouldn't give an award to to a product that's very poor, or an entrant who did not, submit a complete application. So apart from being one of the top 3 in terms of ordinals, you also have to achieve a minimum acceptable cutoff.
So there's many ones that are not.
There are many entries that won't make it. Absolutely. Well, a lot of categories. I mean, again, I don't know what it's been the last couple of years. I know the numbers of entries have gone up. When I was judging, some categories we had as many as 30 or more entries. For 3 awards. And again, the 3 awards, this is all with the caveat that the entries reach a certain minimum cutoff. Yeah. Any other, please?
Can add on to that?
Sure.
Okay, so the judging is done on a point system, okay? So, like Robert said, I mean, some entries are not even, they don't even go forward to the bronze, even though there would be just 5 entries in one specific category. If you don't get the specific number of points, you won't get up there. And this is why also sometimes you have 3 entries, you have 3 winners, but you have like 1 silver and 2 bronze. It's just because they didn't get to the points to have the gold. It's not a comparison, the evaluation. It's really a point system.
That was my reason. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
wondering how fluid were these awards. So they are pretty special.
Well, absolutely. Well, yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the marketability, can't emphasize enough, how marketable it is when an independent body is expressing to really the industry that these are the companies that have achieved a certain level of professionalism and efficacy. So, sorry, was there somebody else?
So I guess what you're saying, Josie, is that they have 3 bronze winners and no silver or gold in the category.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Because the gold requires a certain number of points. Okay. And one of the I guess, that maybe merits some further elaboration. The way the points are assigned, we've eliminated the arbitrariness of it. I mean, there are very specific guidelines to what it deserves X number of points, what deserves Y number of points. So it's not a question of, okay, this is what originality means. It's also what will achieve a certain number of points in the originality element, which incidentally we've pretty well discussed over here. It's not a difficult Rosetta Stone. It's quite clear what the judges are looking for. And I think from what you're getting as potential Image Award entrants, the documentation that you're sent is also pretty clear. And if it's not clear, very important to contact Gladys or whoever you would deal with at PPPC to make sure that it is clear, because I think one of the things that PPPC does is promulgate the industry, and if we want the industry to reach the most professional of levels, it's only in all of our best interest to have the best categories, the best category entrants. Any other questions? Any last questions? No? Okay. You're an easy gang. You're good. All right. Well, listen, again, thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you all the best for all future endeavors. Bye-bye.
Actually, I did have one last question. I was kind of curious what your chances of winning are if you don't put an entry in.
Absolutely no chance of winning if you don't enter, and that's one of the things you bring it up. It's a very good question. Why wouldn't anybody enter? I know that the concern is that after this whole discussion, it takes a significant amount of effort. But if you think about how much effort you're putting into promoting yourselves, the incremental effort in submitting an Image Award entry is not that much greater. And again, I'm saying this, but I think the fact that you're all sitting here, I'm preaching to the converted. I think the concern I would have it for all the people that were supposed to be taking up these seats and those empty seats and those ones in the back.
I mentioned that this morning that we all come from different sized businesses. We've all been in the promotional products industry for different amounts of time. I think we're all sort of in a similar boat, that we're all, our feet are hitting the pavement day in and day out, and we're working with customers, and any kind of tips that we can get, any kind of advice that we can get, and any kind of pointers are greatly appreciated. On behalf of PPPC and its members, I'd like to offer this small token of appreciation.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you.